Welcome, everybody. I always do that. I don't know why. Whoa, I'm like all handsy.
Hello.
Thanks for taking the time to join us tonight. We're super excited. Our objective is basically to bring as much value to the table as we can. We want to, inform and educate you as best as we can so that you can confidently purchase a property this year successfully and with no regrets, because we're having a lot of people regretting what they're doing, and if it has anything to do with us, we'll make sure that you're not making the wrong choices and the wrong decisions. My name is Michelle Ellis, realtor with eXp Realty. I've been a real estate agent for almost 8 years now, and I've been servicing the Quinte area, now the Trent Hills area as well. So essentially the Hastings and Northumberland counties. You may also know me as the most referred realtor. It's kind of what I've been known for the last few years. And I will share my little tidbit of my superpower, which I'm going to ask Rebecca and Karen what theirs is too. But I believe that my superpower is basically that I'm a genie in a bottle. And so when it comes to anything real estate, if you can wish it, I will try my best to make it happen. And so I believe in, making that dream a reality. And I think that anything is possible. So provided we have a clear vision and we have the right people in place to help us, I do believe we can certainly help you live the dream. So I have brought two very highly valuable professionals into the Hive tonight, Karen and Rebecca. Karen is a home inspector. Rebecca is a mortgage professional. And together, I believe that we'll bring you some value tonight that will be essentially invaluable, because what we're able to give you is going to be something that you'll be able to take on into the future, whether you're buying this year, whether you end up buying next year, or what have you. I think you'll definitely go away with some valuable tips and information from us. And again, we'll make sure that you have information so that you're making a informed and good real estate decision, so that you're not making one that you're going to regret, because we don't want that. So Karen, she's a local home inspector. I've used her personally for a couple of homes myself, and countless clients have also used her and trusted her with her knowledge and expertise. She's very good at what she does and has a great reputation. So Karen, tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been doing this, and what your superpower is.
Okay, so I have been doing this since 2007. So 15 years. This is my full-time job. So I do this 24/7, 7 days a week, sometimes Christmas Eve, weekends if people need it. And my superpower is I pretty much know, based on the age of the house, what I'm looking for. That is costly, because I will tell you, people are buying right now and they need to know what they're buying, and it's important. So as a home inspector, we're not getting a lot of business. And the scary part is, one, it's against our code of ethics to go in and not do the standards of practice, but we are allowed to do what they call a consultation fee. So it's kind of like the back door, get around it. The downfall with that is our insurance will not cover us. So errors and omission liabilities, we do carry, well, I won't say we, I do carry that insurance. It is very important, so that on a standard home inspection, 2.5 hours, you know what you're buying. So I kind of just some of the things. So an older house, when you have a 100-year-old house, structure is probably one of the big important parts for any kind of house. And people are buying without it. So you need to know, when you're going and walking up to a house, you need to look at the house. You need to look to make sure it's square. It was built square. If it's a brick structure and it's 60, 70 years old, know that that brick needs to be in good condition, because that is actually the structure of the building. Stone foundation, you're looking for sloped floors. You're looking for cracks. One of the things I think is a superpower for me is I can go into any house. I can tell you what's in the house. I can tell you how many windows, doors, and whatnot, but I cannot tell you the color of the paint on the wall, because it's irrelevant for me to do my job. I'm not looking at the furniture. I'm not looking where you place the furniture. So it's very important that you take the personal part of the house out. And if you're not allowed to have an inspector come in with you, you need to look for cracks. You need to look for crooked walls, open and close doors and windows, because that will tell you whether things have settled. Some of the big ticket items that I just kind of went on here, and some of the big ticket items when they're buying a house, you can always buy and do mortgage plus improvements. But in this market, it's expensive right now to buy. So foundation work, these are the top expensive things. Foundation work, if you have to underpin, meaning fix a drop basement, you're anywhere from $300 per linear foot. So it's expensive. Electrical, based on the age of the house, 100-year-old plus can have either knob and tube wiring. Up until the 50s is when they stopped using that. And that again is an insurance issue. Aluminum wiring, I wouldn't say don't worry about it. It's an easy fix for an insurance company policy. They just need to update the outlets and switches. Roofs, depends on the size of your roof as to how much it's going to cost you. The average house used to be $4,000 to $5,000 for a bungalow. People are paying 10 to 12 right now because of the cost factor. Another one that can be expensive in older houses is asbestos. So know that when you look and see, the less issued asbestos items are 9x9 floor tiles. The square acoustic tiles, they can have asbestos in, but the big one that anybody really needs to do, and going in without an inspection, you can't look in the attic. You're not allowed to. I'm insured and covered to do that, and they know I'm going to do that. So there's a type of insulation, and it's called vermiculite. It can have asbestos, and if it is the brand Zonalite that has asbestos, it can be $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to remediate it. It's kind of downplayed a bit now, but if you need an electrician to go in and do some electrical wires, know that they're not going to go in that attic unless you can prove it's safe for them. Water lines, sewer lines, these are all things that can be costly. So if it's a galvanized water line feeding the house, pretty much start from inside the house and go to your curb stop. That's what you have to replace. You're $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. To do that. Those are really the big ticket items. But when you walk into a house, take the personal part out of it and go in and look at the house. Go in when you're walking up, look at the roof. When you're driving up to go look at these houses, look at the roofs, look at the walls, look at the eaves trough. Look for things to show that there's any kind of bowing signs. Look at the brick, see if it's moving all around on the house. Those are the things that can really cost you. Michelle's been on quite a few with them, with me.
I'm pretty well versed in some of this stuff.
Yeah, oh, she's very well versed, I know. Crawl spaces. Crawl spaces can probably cripple someone buying a house if you can't look in that crawl space. If it's wet, dry rot, mold, mildew, it's a big, scary, it's the dark place that no one wants to go and people don't want to look in there. Stick your head and look in there. Structure can be fixed. Dry rot can be fixed. But again, it depends on how bad it is as to the cost factor in. So everybody's basically overpaying for a house right now, and you need to know your budget. And if you're buying an older house, honestly, Michelle, if you have clients that are looking at a house, if you want to give me a call and say, Karen, look at this house. What do you think I should be looking for it in it? Michelle will text me a picture. What is this? What am I looking at?
I did that last week.
Text me those pictures. Text me them for your client. Because for me, it's nice to have a good income, but ultimately I always want to make sure that the buyer isn't buying a money pit, because we all know what can happen. It can cripple, it can destroy families, it can do a lot of damage to a family, and people will lose things. And there are some houses that I've gone to look for clients and they've walked away within 15 minutes of me being at that house because there's some structural issues. I will tell you, out of town agent, out-of-town buyer bought that house, and I'm gonna say the repairs are probably close to $200,000. They don't know it. No conditions firm. So for me, to push your local agent like Michelle, she knows the area. If she has a question, she can text me and I can get those answers for you. So that's where you really need to make sure that your client has a good, strong agent like Michelle that will do those when they're looking at the house and know what they're looking at.
And especially right now, because I mean, with the amount of rain we've had in the last 24 hours or whatever, I mean, when the house that we went and looked at this afternoon with, I went and looked at a house with a buyer and, you know, the basement's pretty wet. So I said to him, like, it could be one of, you know, a few things. It could be grading. It could be the grading of the house. It could be, you know, the eaves troughs are not placed properly. It could be something significant, but it could also be something that's easily fixed.
Yeah.
Right. So and knowing things like that to be able to tell a client while we're looking at a house can make them feel a little bit more confident. You know, obviously having somebody like yourself come along, which now, you know, essentially could be a good option. We did that with the house that we bought last year with you, is I had you come. I think I told the agent you were
we were limited again, even though it was Michelle, we were very limited to the time we had in the house. But it was very important. We looked around the outside. And I think the biggest thing always, 90% of the water that comes around a foundation comes off a roof. And you can control most of that. Other than that, if it's a leaky foundation, a leaky basement, it's costly to do that. But one of the quick and easy tools, go to Canadian Tire. This is just a Mastercraft. It's a moisture meter. You just power it on. It's got a little green light. And if there's water, you're going to hear it. Okay. If it goes past an acceptable level, it's what every agent should go grab these things.
I should go get one of those. I do have one of my laser measurers.
You just literally, you just place it on a wall, on a spot, on the floor, and it's going to beep. You can't put it on concrete because concrete's porous. So it'll always do it. The other thing too is just one of these little outlet testers. Just plug it in. You want to see a green light. If you don't see a green light, it's either older wiring, wired wrong. And the best thing about this, I don't know if you can see, it literally tells you what's wrong with the electrical when you're going. You just stick it in.
I didn't know that.
Anybody can pick one of these up.
Yeah. Okay. So now I have to go get two things.
Yeah. I mean, I have an infrared camera. I have all kinds of other fancy tools in that. Do I use the infrared camera? Not all the time, because I can scan your walls and tell you where voids of insulation. But are you going to rip that wall apart? Right. So I'm more looking for second story. When you're going in, look at the ceilings. People don't look at the ceilings of the houses. Where there's a bathroom upstairs, when you come downstairs, look underneath to see what's there. Put your knees on the toilet, wiggle it, see if it's loose, because if it's loose, you probably have it. Don't be afraid to put the stopper in the sink and fill it halfway up while you're in there, pull the stopper out. Mm-hmm. Those are the kind of things that when you're walking through the house, you can do it. Everything's going to drain. And if it's not draining, it's not going good.
Right. And then water pressure too, right? A lot of people don't think to turn on the tap. I've had you like taste water and smell it. Yeah. Like...
I don't do taste quality, but I can tell you this. I'd rather taste country water than I can taste the chlorine because I'm on well, so this is, I'm used to drinking country water. So when I turn on a tap in town, I can smell the chlorine, but that's, it's just how people need to look at the house. They need to look at it like you're looking,
beyond,
I don't know, if it gets to be look at a used car, you're going to look for rust, you're going to look at the tires. When you're looking for a house, you're going to do that. And honestly, new houses, people who are buying new houses, if you know someone that's buying a new house, it has a carry-on warranty. There's a 7-year warranty. You have 30 days and a 1 year. If you don't find stuff on that 30-day and 1 year, that's it. They're done. You're not covered for the rest of the 7 years. The only thing it covers is structural. So it's very important if you have a person buying a new house. I do new build inspections. And right now I am working with another company. And I was in Ottawa Friday. I've been in Kingston, and Terrion is so far behind. They've actually hired this other company who has hired people like myself who are an RHI registered home inspector in the province of Ontario, and a national certified home inspector, which I'm across Canada. They're hiring us to go and measure these things and check the issues. And it's either going to be a Terrion claim or it's not. And it's very important, because I will tell you this, I've had one client who, and it's a local house, the weeping system, the drainage system for the whole house wasn't done. So it's a brand new house, and I mean brand new. The basement is full of mold. And it actually is unsafe to live in that house. Terrion paid them out $300,000, but they had to take their finished basement apart. They had to knock out all the concrete floor. They had to dig up around the foundation. They had to put all the drainage system in and then rebuild their basement.
Oh, that's such a nightmare. And a lot of people think like new home, it's the best way to go. Like they are not building homes like they did 50, 60, 100 years ago.
I will tell you, in this area, we are very, very fortunate. 99% of the builders are really good. There's only one that, well, I got a letter from their lawyer to cease and desist. Apparently, when I do new build inspections there, they're calling it loitering.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
well,
but I look beyond, and that's the thing.
And that's the thing, you're not afraid to call out the shoddy work that's done, right? Like, I mean, a lot of agents, I know they don't like the inspector that, catches those stupid little things, but as a realtor representing a buyer, I need that, because not only is that protecting me, it's protecting my client. And I would much rather them know what they're getting into than to purchase a property and be into $100,000, $200,000 structural issue after the fact. It's much easier to,
I think it's going to get a little scary. Within the next 6 months, people have bought, now they're moving in. And once they get in and get settled, I think all the ugly is going to start to show for some of them. I've gone and done some after purchase inspections. So they've moved in. Now they want to know what they've bought. And I've gone in and done some of those for them. It's exactly the same as a home inspection. But so far everybody's made out okay locally that's done that.
But it's a risk, right?
It's a risk. It's a huge risk. And like, if you're already paying and you're at your max budget, what can you afford to repair? To dig up a foundation for water, $15,000. A roof, 8 to 10. If you're maxed out, it's going to start to, people, are going to have to refinance. Yeah. It's going to be a little difficult.
Yeah. All right. So last question. What is your best advice you can give a person buying in 2022?
I think for the person buying in 2022, one is take Michelle with you, who's going to get these 2 new tools.
I am tomorrow. I will.
And look beyond the pretty of the house, because everybody right now is painting a house stark white. Look closely at the walls, look at corners, look at cracks, open doors and windows, run water, do some of your own. If it's a crawl space and you can't get into it, it's not beneath me to pull out a floor register and sniff. So if I can smell musty smell, because if you can smell musty, then there's dry rot, and then you're into an expense.
Right.
I mean, I'm grateful. A couple of weeks ago, as I'm sure you saw the bruises on my arm, I literally got stuck in a crawl space. I had to be pulled out by my belt to the back of my pants.
Oh, I don't know.
I could not get out. There was no way.
I would probably have a panic attack, and then I would start to swell, and then I would just not get out at all. I'm
not afraid to go in them. They're not glamorous, but that is where people will make everything look really, really good. You need to look beyond the good. You need to look a little more critical.
And I think, too, like you said, well, like I say to everybody, you can't just invest in pretty. You can't just you know, be starstruck with how pretty the house looks and how the staging looks. And like, that's a visual mind trick that people are falling for. And unfortunately, you know, they do need to look beyond the pretty and look at the
and
things
that's and that's it. They do need to look beyond the pretty. They really, really do. And the same thing with a new build. If you're buying a new build, learn about Tarion and do it, because they have lots of money for issues. They even cover radon. You can get your own tester and do a radon test in your house. They'll cover up to 15,000. Not that it's an issue in this area, because I've been one of the test homes. But you know, people need to know, just because you bought it new, it comes with a warranty like your car. Make sure you do investigate the Tarion policy and read up on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, that was super valuable. I'm sure I will actually go back and listen to all the stuff you said so I can re-educate myself, because my brain's not necessarily totally absorbing everything. So Rebecca, she is a mortgage professional who works outside of the bank. She has a long experience in the bank, and then she left the bank. So Rebecca, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Rebecca Dick. I'm a mortgage broker with the Mortgage Advisors out of Ottawa, but I actually work mostly out of Kingston. And I used to work at CIBC for 17 years, writing mortgages for about 15. And I've been out on my own for the last 2.5 as a broker. So that was a big move for me, but an exciting one. Now I have a lot more options for my clients. So it's great. A lot less declines, because we can see everybody on the broker side, which is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. So superpowers. I know that you wanted to know that.
Love this. Yeah.
That was a tough one to come up with.
This is where you get to toot your own horn.
Yeah. So I don't know. I like to think that I've been around a long time. So I've seen many different situations, and you can pretty much throw anything at me and I should be able to figure it out, and how to actually get that deal to work and how to get it approved. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So we're going to focus, I think, our conversation more towards the first-time home buyers and what they need to know. I guess the first question we could talk about which is the question that, you know, I would think that is a normal thing to know, and we expect people to know, but is a pre-approval really necessary?
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. It's mandatory.
Yeah.
Do not start to shop unless you have been pre-approved, and not pre-qualified, actually pre-approved, because there is a difference.
Yeah. And what I like to tell people is, you know, have you been pre-approved? Have you, been talking to the bank or a mortgage professional? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, do you go to the grocery store without your debit card or any cash in your pocket? Because you can't buy anything without that. And the mortgage pre-approval is the exact same thing. So when I'm talking to a buyer, I don't not give them the time of day, but this is the first initial step that is like the most important. So I always say, before we go any further, this is the number one thing that needs to be addressed. I can put you in touch with Rebecca. I can put you in touch with whoever you need, but that is obviously the number one thing that we certainly need to address. So what is the difference between a pre-approval and a pre-qualification?
So getting pre-approved actually means that I'm looking at your credit bureau. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do. I am going to pull your credit, because a lot of times I might, discover something there which actually needs some improvement before we can get you to point of being pre-approved. And I'm actually going to look at your income confirmation. I'm going to review all of those documents, and I'm going to validate all of that before I actually say that they can go out shopping with you and put an offer in on a house in this market. So we are going to dot all of our I's and cross our T's and make sure that we've actually done a complete review of the file before we let the client go out pre-approved.
And that's what makes you different than the rest, because some of them just tell them, yeah, you should be good for 500, go ahead. And
sometimes there's professionals in the industry that will just throw some numbers in based on a client's income. You come in and you tell them that you make $50,000 a year, and they say, okay, well, you can qualify for this and you should be good. But unless you've actually pulled your credit bureau and reviewed it, and provided your income confirmation, then you're really not pre-approved. So you want to make sure that you have a solid pre-approval in place, and you've got a good relationship with your broker, and you can trust that for sure if you're going out to put a offer out.
So one side note is credit. So that could be a whole thing in itself, I know. But as a general standard rule, I guess, where would the minimum standard be for, someone who could qualify for a mortgage as opposed to someone who could not?
Good question. So the minimum score that you absolutely have to have is 600. It gets a little bit different if you're putting less down. So, but the minimum score would be 600.
Right. Okay. And anyone that's, in the process of trying to prepare themselves, they can check their credit on their own, I believe. I mean, I bank with RBC and I know that they have like a credit report thing that you can pull once a month or something. But does that hurt your credit, or is that like
no, that's usually a soft hit and it doesn't actually hurt your credit. You can also sign up for another app called Borrowell, and that's a good one too, that will give you a good indication of what your credit score is. It's not always accurate. So I've had clients, that come to me and they say, okay, we're finally, because I'll work with you to improve your credit if we need to do that. Where sometimes you will see that score and it's a little discouraging, because when you come back to me, it might not actually be as high as you're seeing on your side. It looks a little different when I actually pull it directly from Equifax. But it does give you a good general idea for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what do buyers need to be successful in the initial stages of getting pre-approved in place, or pre-approval in place? And then what are some key points that they should be aware of by stepping into this stage? So maybe some do's and don'ts. I know one big don't is like, don't go out and buy a car, or don't go out and buy something big, because that could definitely, hurt the actual end result.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't make any large purchases, that's for sure. So getting the actual pre-approval is pretty easy. We send out the application and I can turn that around pretty quickly for you in about 24 hours. In order for me to be able to give you the pre-approval, I do ask you to provide documentation. So you would need to provide your income confirmation. Now, it's a little different for people that are full-time, part-time, or self-employed. So the guidelines are a little different there. I always want to see a letter of employment. So if you are employed, then I want to see a letter of employment and your most recent pay stub. Those have to be dated within the last 30 days. I also ask for your last 2 years T4s. And that just gives me an idea if you have overtime, because sometimes I can add the overtime as well, or shift premiums, that type of thing, depending on what type of job you have, which will help you to qualify for a little bit more if I have a 2-year average on that. If you're self-employed or part-time, then I always need to see a 2-year history. So instead of having that letter of employment and pay stub, I definitely need to have those 2 years T4s. And if you're self-employed, I need 2 years tax returns with notice of assessments. So a little bit of different documentation, just depending on what your application looks like. Good thing is we simplify that for you. So once we send the application to you, it actually pre-populates the documents that I actually need based on the information that you've input. So it just tells you exactly what you need to provide, which is easy. And we've got a system that we use. It's called Snap NOA. We pay for it, but we want to just make it a little easier for your clients and our clients, where we can access your T4s and your notice of assessments if you authorize for us to do that electronically. So if that's easy and it's helpful, then we can do that too. Kind of helps to speed things along.
Yeah.
So starting with some do's, the one thing that I always say to clients is be honest and upfront with your mortgage broker. Make sure you tell me everything about your financial situation. It's always better for me to know upfront than for me to find something out later. I had a guy recently that was doing a refinance and we were ready to close, and I had his letter of employment and his pay stub, and we always do a verbal income confirmation check. So my lender will phone your employer to make sure that you are in fact still employed. And he was off work on a temporary unpaid leave and didn't mention it to me. So that's always a little bit of a blind side, and it's just better for me to know that stuff up front, because then I can help you navigate it and I can give you the proper advice to make sure that we can move forward. And I certainly wouldn't want you to be putting an offer in on a house and then all of a sudden I find out that for some reason you've been off work for, whatever reason. So be upfront, be honest, tell me everything. If you're off work and you're going back, let me know. I've had lots of clients that have told me they work full-time. Then when I get their pay stubs, I can see that they don't have full-time hours on their pay stubs. So that's always a question, You may have been sick. You may have taken some time off. I hear, well, I've been wedding planning and taking every Friday off lately, or we've been skiing lately, that type of thing. So those are the things that you don't want to do when you're applying for a mortgage. If you are full-time, make sure you go to work, yeah. Have the full-time hours reflected on your pay stubs, because it creates question for us, and it could be an issue down the road if we're trying to get you qualified, and we do rely on that income to actually qualify you. Pay really close attention to paying your bills on time. Make sure that you do that. And your cell phone bill is a big one that people aren't usually aware of, that reports on your bureau. So I am going to see that. That's usually the number one bill that I see reporting where there's late payments, just because people think, oh, it's a utility bill or it's a cell phone bill. I can get away with being a few days late on that, but I have to pay my credit card on time. Make sure that you're paying everything on time, because we are going to see that. And that's always a little bit of a red flag and a concern. Pay close attention to your spending, obviously. And keep a close eye on what your balances are compared to what your limit is on your bureau or on your credit card. So basically, when we're looking at it, and most people don't know this, we want to see you carrying a balance that's about 30% or less of what your limit actually is. So that's a really important one. As soon as you start to get close to the maximum of what your limit is, it actually lowers your credit score. So those are just little tips that if I can give the advice to upfront, it's kind of going to make sure that you're in a really good position when you actually are going to apply. So be mindful of those. Obviously, set any additional money that you have aside for savings. That's always helpful. And if you're a first-time home buyer and you're going to be closing more than 90 days out, we might want to consider you speaking to a financial planner or your bank and having an RSP contribution made, because then you can always withdraw from that. So that's a discussion that we could have. The don'ts, big don'ts, don't change jobs. Sometimes we have a client that we've approved and they could be closing a couple of months out, and all of a sudden they think it's a really good idea to change jobs, and that's a really bad idea. Don't do that. If you have a job opportunity, talk to me. And if it's in the same industry and you're starting a new position and you're not going to be on probation, and you are guaranteed full-time hours, then I'm going to give you the green light and I'm going to say, yeah, that's okay. Or if you are in the same industry and you've been doing it for a really long time and you are on probation, depending on your application, I could potentially make an exception to that as well. So just again, be really upfront and honest, have good communication with me, keep me posted, let me know what's going on in your life, and I'll give you the best advice that I can to make sure that we can move forward and actually close on your purchase. One of the things that I don't want you to do is start moving money around. So everybody thinks that once they have bought a house, they should just start transferring money from their savings to their checkings and moving from their investments, and it's going all over the place, right? Then we're looking at it and we're trying to trace this. And then I'm now asking buyers to show me multiple bank accounts and investment statements. And I literally have to make note of every single transaction that's over $1,000. I have to show what account it came from, where it went to, and I have to actually prove where all of that money's coming going from. So that gets a little bit complicated if you do that. So I always say to clients, don't transfer any money, leave everything where it is. Obviously you're going to want to move it closer to closing because you're going to want to write one check to the lawyer, but let's get everything signed off on. Let's make sure our lender's happy, and then I'll give you the green light when you can start moving money around. So that's a really big, important one.
Never knew that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. We've spent hours and hours and hours going through bank statements. Trust me, I've had like 4 and 5 different accounts.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's a great advice though, because people, they don't realize and they don't think, right? But if it's going to save everybody headaches, then just stay put.
They always think they're doing the right thing because then you're just putting it all into one account, right? But we actually literally do have to account for every single transfer and large deposit that's in and out of the account. So it just complicates things just a tad.
Right.
Don't make any large purchases. Don't buy any vehicles. That's a big one. Whatever you do, buy your house before you buy your car. Yeah. And even after you're approved, don't go out there and start buying all new furniture. Don't put it on the Leon's card, or, you know, start ordering all this stuff on credit, because we can pull your credit bureau at any time. And if you've gone out and you've spent a whole bunch of money furnishing your new home, that could really throw things out of whack, and it could affect us closing your actual mortgage. So don't do that until after you've been.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So that's really good information. And I think, you know, some people have probably learned something, if not a lot. I'm like thinking that I know all this stuff, and I'm like going out to Lowe's tomorrow to buy some tools, and I'm getting lots of
0%, you know, where you get all your appliances at 0%, right?
Yeah. So another question that comes up a lot to me, and I always like, I mean, yes, I know a little bit about mortgages and the whole process, but I'm not well versed. And so why don't we talk about the minimum down payment situation? Because sometimes that's, very confusing.
Yeah, for sure. So that's changed in the last, couple of years. So now buyers are required to have 5% down of the first 500. And then if they're purchasing over 500, they do have to have 10% down on anything that's over 500. So be mindful of that. So if you're buying for 600, for example, then you're going to need to have 25,000 down on the first 500, and then you're going to need to have an additional 10% of the next 100. Therefore, you're going to need to have 35,000 down. So important to educate our clients on that, because not everybody realizes that that's a rule.
And then, so just quickly too, on the CMHC thing. So 20% down, you don't pay CMHC fees.
Correct. Yeah. So 20% down avoids CMHC, and then it's conventional financing.
Right. Which usually saves people probably what, 10, 15,000-ish, or depending on, I guess it depends on the purchase price.
Yeah. So for a client that's buying with 5% down, the CMHC premium is 4% of your mortgage amount.
Okay. And they pay that out as a lump sum right off the top, or is that something paid out?
They don't pay it out as a lump sum. I mean, you have an option to do that. Most people don't have the cash to do that. So what we typically do is we add that into the mortgage. So then, if you're buying for 500, you're putting your 25,000 down, your 475, and then I add the CMHC premium in over and above. So I do 4% on top of the 475, and then that becomes your total mortgage amount.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
All right. So what additional cost will buyers have to take into consideration and expect when purchasing a property?
Really good question. So over and above your down payment, we always have to show an additional 1.5% of your purchase price for closing costs. So that's going to cover your lawyer's fees, your land transfer tax, and anything else that you might have to pay out. If you have to reimburse the seller for property taxes that they've paid, 1.5% is a really good standard number that we work with.
Okay.
So $500,000 purchase, you're going to need an additional $7,500. So you're going to need your $25,000 down payment, and then an additional $7,500 to show for closing costs. Now, with that being said, I'll point out that first-time home buyers are getting a land transfer tax credit of up to $4,000, depending on your purchase price. Okay. So if you are a first-time home buyer, I still have to see that 1.5% for your closing costs and your land transfer tax. However, when you go to the lawyer's office, they confirm that you are a first-time home buyer, and then you actually get a credit. So you get your credit back for your land transfer tax, and you don't actually have to pay out that full 1.5%. But it's still very important for you to know that you need to be able to show it to me. Because a lot of the times buyers will say, "Oh, but I'm a first-time home buyer, so I don't have to do that 4,000." You still have to show me that you have the money. You're going to get it credited to you at the lawyer's office.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay.
So rate guarantees. I know there's a lot of, some banks will do hold it for this, and some people can do it for this. What can you tell us about rate guarantees?
Okay, so rate guarantees are very important in today's market because our interest rates are changing all the time. So we're constantly seeing rate increases at this time. And what a rate hold is going to do for you is you're going to come to me, you're going to get a pre-approval, and then I'm going to put a rate hold in for 120 days. So that way it just locks in that rate for the next 120 days, so that if you buy and rates continue to go up while you're shopping, then I've got you locked in at that lower rate.
Perfect. So the sooner they get locked in, the better, really. And then hopefully within that 120 days, we can secure something.
Find them a house. Absolutely. Yes, that's the best plan.
Yeah. So just a sort of like an aside, obviously the last couple of years have been hard on everybody, and we're seeing more separations happening, and there's lots more sales happening because of this unfortunate event. So in the case of a separation and, you know, say they split and they're buying, what is good information that they need to know in regards to this?
Well, what they need to know is that we absolutely need a separation agreement. So when you complete your application, you're going to tell me that you're separated. It's automatically going to default where you do need to provide me with separation agreement. And the reason for that is I need to take into consideration if you're paying out child support, if you're paying out any alimony, and if you're receiving it. Because if you're receiving it, I'm allowed to actually use it as an income to help qualify you for the application. If you're paying it, unfortunately, I do have to add it as a liability. So it's almost like a monthly debt. It is a monthly payment that I have to take into consideration. So a separation agreement is always required because that gives me the information that I need.
And that agreement has to be sealed or whatever by a lawyer, right? So it has to be a legal separation, not something you both sign on a piece of paper.
Correct. Yes, it has to be a legal document.
Okay, so I guess we've covered a lot of ground here, and I think all this information is crazy valuable. What are your overall thoughts on the market as to where you think it's going? And then, of course, what is your best piece of advice for anybody buying in 2022?
Oh God, well, I can't see the market changing and going down. And I keep hearing clients saying to me, we're not in a rush and we're just going to wait for the prices to go down and then we're going to buy. So my advice would be, that's not going to happen. Get into the market sooner than later. Don't wait for the market to crash, and get your pre-approval. Make sure that you do that right away. Let's get your rate hold in place so that if rates go up, we've got you locked in at the lower.
Right.
And be prepared. Provide us with what we need, all of the documents, have everything at hand, so that you can be competitive and be realistic about what our market is and how much you're actually going to have to pay for that house. And if it's priced at 400, what it's going to sell for. Yeah, that'd be my advice.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So I'm obviously, we've got a ton of great information here, and I thought I would just touch on about 10 different quick points. Obviously I could go on for hours probably on this whole topic, but I'm just going to dive in. So when I'm working with a buyer, I have a pre-screening process, and the pre-screening process is essentially just something that I think is really important to do to understand my client. It's not to see how much you're approved for, so I can tell you to go kick rocks, because I don't care what you're approved for. I will help you whether you're looking for, you know, $100,000 property or $10 million property. I treat everybody the same. But I do think it's really important for you to convey to me what you're looking for, you know, what your goal is, what your timeline looks like, what your financial situation is. And a lot of the time, people sort of feel like we're being invasive, and a lot of times too, people are like, well, why do you need to know that information? And I understand, same with Rebecca, like, you know, we're asking all these questions, and it's kind of an intimate thing where we're asking, you know, about your income and all this stuff, but it's so that we can all help you make the best decision and be creative if we need to be creative and that kind of thing. So I like to put this pre-screening in process because it's you telling me what you want, you know, what your goals are, what your timeline is, and what your budget is. So I've found over the years, you know, people say, you know, our budget's 500, but, you know, in the process, they see a house for 6 and they're like, well, you know, we could stretch it if we can. And it's like, no, like, I need to bring you back here. This is what you said your budget was. So do we need to adjust this, or like, where is this money coming from? I realize that, you know, there's that perfect house out there somewhere. But it's important that we stay within the lines. If your goal is we can't stray from a $500,000 budget, then I will make sure that we don't stray from a $500,000 budget. It's really important for me. And I have a team of people working with me. I have a couple of administrators. I want to, you know, also be in communication with Rebecca or the mortgage person that is, working on their behalf. So it's really important for me to have all of the information so I can hear what you're saying, so I can go through and make sure I understand completely what the goal is. And that's something that I share with the team, so everybody knows what the goal is, where we're going with this, what the plan is, and that kind of thing. I cannot stress enough, obviously, to ensure that the pre-approval is in place. That's usually one of the first questions that I ask, even when I get phone calls of, can I look at this property? And of course, I'm happy to do that. But my question is if you haven't been pre-approved and you're just interested in looking at a house, you're wasting everybody's time. You're wasting your own time and you're wasting my time in a nice way. I don't mean it in a mean way. I just mean that's the number one thing you need to have in place before you start purchasing a property, is you need to know, first of all, what your budget is, what you can afford, and then we move forward with a plan. I'm very calculated and structured in the sense of the whole process because I have a good reputation. The process is a proven process that works for everybody. And so I don't just willy-nilly this whole thing. And people don't like that. People just want a realtor to answer the phone and answer their calls and go show them the house on a whim and all this stuff. Whereas I'm more calculated and want to do it the right way. Ensure you have a plan. So what do you want? Do you want a house that's a bungalow? Do you want a 2-story? Like, it's okay to be good for both. Like, we don't care if it's a 2-story, we don't care if it's a bungalow, but if you're purchasing a property and your in-laws or your parents or something are living with you and you need to have a bedroom, on the main level, then we need to make sure we stick to that plan. Because are you real, like, you may find that perfect house, but are you really going to be okay with purchasing a property and your parent or whatever having to walk the stairs to the basement up and down? That's not, a reasonable thing to do. So we want to make sure that your plan is solid. I love those buyers that tell you they're looking from, like on the other side of Toronto to Quebec border. And it's like, okay, let's be a little bit more specific. What do you want and where do you want, where do you want to grow your roots? I'm okay for the person looking for the best deal and that kind of thing, but I know my territory. So if you tell me where you want to land, I can certainly help you within that, within that area. But I think it's important you're more focused and you're more apt to be successful if you pick a specific area and you go, okay, this is the area we want to live in. Let's find something here. So if it's Trent Hills, then we focus on Trent Hills. If it's Belleville, then we focus on Belleville and that kind of thing. So I think it's really important that we stick to the plan and be very clear on what you want. Creative collaboration with other industry professionals. So obviously with people like Rebecca and Karen, you want to be able to collaborate with these people so that the whole experience in itself is a great experience. If we have to be creative and we have to have Karen come with us to the second showing of the house because they're taking offers tomorrow and we can get in for a second viewing and we have to tell them that Karen is your mom, then so be it. Like if we can get Karen's input on, the structure of the home and, she looks for the red flags, she's looking at the roof, she's looking at the foundation, the things that she can look and see quickly rather than being there for a few hours, that's going to be super beneficial to you. And there's actually, I think it was last year for sure, I know it was, Karen, that you took clients of mine through, actually I had to have another agent show because I was away, but you went to a second showing. They were sold on this property. They were going to put in an offer. They were going to go way over. And then I said to them, why don't you have Karen go with you to a second showing just to make sure, because there was some water issues. The house was on Quinmalac Road, I think, or somewhere in the Madoc area. Anyways, so Karen had gone with them and they decided and discovered that there had been extensive water damage in the basement and it was going to be costly. And it was a really good idea that they had Karen go, because they decided totally against it. And they ended up purchasing a property that they're very, very happy with now. But that just goes to show that when you're creative and you can collaborate and you're giving, all of the options to the buyers, it's really important that you can do that, so that you're not things aren't falling through the cracks. As much as they love that property and as much as I would love to see them be happy in that property, it's also important to make sure that, okay, so it looks like there's been water damage. Let's get an inspector in here, even if it's just for 20 minutes. Let's just do a quick overview and make sure that it's nothing extensive, which obviously that kind of thing pays off. If you are offered a new job and Rebecca is able to creatively come up with, okay, well, it's the same industry, you've been in this industry for a really long time, she can still make it work and you can make that transition within the whole process, then by all means. But it's important to keep those professionals in your corner when you're in this process, because it may be a long process, it may be a short process, but it's really important to just make sure you're dotting the I's and crossing the T's, because we want it to be number one, we want it to be enjoyable and a good experience. And we don't want you to get frustrated throughout the experience, because there is a lot of frustration happening right now in this industry. And, a lot of things are being overlooked. And I'd like to know that myself and the industry professionals that I have working with me, we're making sure that everything is taken care of. Competitive edge. So there have been times in the last couple of years where I have been in competition with several other buyers, and what I do differently than other agents is I'm happy to spend a little extra time trying to, portray the story to the sellers, give them a little bit of a personal experience. And so what I do is something along the lines of a personalized video presentation. So when my buyers give me an offer, I compile the information, I record myself presenting the information to the sellers. Sometimes the agent shows it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they say they showed it, but I know they didn't do it. But it's really important that I give the story of the buyer to the sellers, because there are sellers out there that do care about who's buying their house. I know there's a lot of sellers out there that just want to take the money and run. And that is the case for some people. But there are people that have been in their house. For example, my grandmother's house is coming on the market tomorrow. She would love to see somebody take the house and put some love, cosmetics and whatever into it, rather than seeing somebody from the city or whatever demo it and put a new house on the lot. I mean, it's inevitable. It could happen for sure, but there are people who do care about who's moving into their house. And so if I can portray a story of the buyer to the sellers, look, this is a young family who, plans on being here and raising their children here. And, that might tug on some heartstrings to them, and they may prefer to see a family go in there, a local family go in there and grow their roots, as opposed to an outside city person coming in and using it as a rental property. So there have been times where I've won with less money because I was able to portray a story to the sellers and kind of give them a little bit more information about the buyers. So not only can I give a competitive edge that way, but I can also get my buyers to do a video. Haven't really had any buyers be totally comfortable with like, hey, this is us and we love your house and we want to buy it and this is why. But honestly, you have to stand out in some way, shape, or form to catch the seller's attention. When they're looking at 30 offers and only one offer comes in with a video presentation, you can't tell me that that's not going to stand out to them. It definitely is going to stand out. And I think it's really important that, that the buyers get involved. So whether they do a video presentation or whether they write a letter to the sellers. I've had several people write letters to the sellers. Some people, some agents just throw it away and they don't care and they just want to look at the offers and be done. And that's unfortunate. But like I said, there are people who do care about who's buying their home. So if you can take the time to do a video or write a letter to the sellers, I think that's going to make you stand out. And I think that could help, you know, in the long run, get you the house that you're looking to buy. One other thing that's helpful in this market right now is being as accommodating to the sellers as you possibly can. So if you're renting right now and you're month to month and the seller needs a 3-month closing, and you could totally make that work, but even though you want to move in like tomorrow, or you wanted to move in yesterday, if you can make that work, then try and make that work for them, because the sellers are looking, there's certain situations where sellers are looking to sell their house and then buy another house, but that transition right now is hard. They don't know whether they should buy first, sell first, what they want to do. So if you as a buyer can accommodate what their needs are, you're going to have a better chance of being more of a desirable buyer for them to choose over somebody who's saying, you know, I want to move in 30 days. That's just going to add stress to the seller. Whereas if you're like, hey, you just tell me when you want to move and we will make this work, that's going to help you, you know, secure more trust in the seller, and they'll be more apt to want to work with you. One other thing, so 2 other things, is be realistic and do not look at properties over your budget. It is just inevitable right now that if a house is listed for 500,000, it's probably going to go for 500,000 or above. Unless the house has been sitting on the market for 30 days or more, then the chances, you know, if they're holding offers for 5 or 7 days, chances are they're expecting more money. So if a house is listed for 500 and on offer day, you're like, okay, there's 5 offers. Okay, I'm going to go in at 450. That's not going to work. That is not a good plan. And it's just a waste of everybody's time and effort, because if there's multiple offers, there's likely going to be multiple people going over the asking price. So you have to be realistic. If your budget is 600, then be comfortable looking at houses at 500, because then you're able to have that competitive edge, not only with, you know, maybe the letter and the video and everything else, but you will be, you know, have a little bit of money to compete with. I mean, there have been houses that have gone 100, 200, 300. I've heard houses going 350,000. Now, none of my clients have done 350,000 over asking, but I did have clients last summer go 200, and I think it's 252,000 over asking, which is crazy. But I mean, it's the reality of what we're dealing with right now. So you have to be realistic. If, like I said, if your budget's 500, look at 450, so you can have that competitive edge. And then you're not super discouraged when, you know, when the house goes for 475 or whatever you. And here's another thing. I know I'm squirreling here for a second, but the way that I tell my clients to look at their budget. So when they're going in into competition on a property, and say there's 5 offers, and they're like, Michelle, I have no idea what to offer. Like, what would you offer? And this is what I say to them. Okay, so put out your number on paper and look at that number. If you're comfortable with paying that amount of money for this house and not a penny more, and you find out that the house sold for $1,000 more than your budget that you set out and that you offered, are you going to kick yourself in the butt for not going that extra mile? Like, you have to put your best foot forward if you're absolutely in love with the house. And I will always tell you whether you're being unrealistic or realistic, because 5 years down the road, chances are you're going to want to downsize, upsize, change of scenery, something. You're probably going to want to move. And I don't want you to be in a position to want to sell and not be able to make money. So I will always be realistic with you in the sense of, you know, if this is a 5-year house, like a 5-year plan, and 5 years when you go to sell this, I want to make sure that you're making money off of this purchase, not losing money. So it's really important that you're very well aware of, you know, and comfortable with when you're putting in an offer, you have to know that you may not get a second chance at putting in another offer. I myself, as a listing agent, I sometimes, if there's offers that are very, very close, I will go back to both agents, say the top 2. I will go back to both agents and say, look, your offers are very, very similar. If there's anything that you can change to make your offer better, here is your opportunity. But not a lot of agents will actually do that. They just want to get the deal done. They want to, you know, take their money and run. But it's really important to make sure that you know that you're putting your best foot forward and you feel confident, and you're not going to be upset knowing that, you know, that house sold for 501,000 and you were only okay with spending 500,000. That's always a kick in the butt, but it does make a difference at the end of the day. So I guess in closing, I would like to open up if there is question and answers or questions, we can answer them. I know there's Alexa and Annabella hanging out still. I would like to remind you that this is being recorded. So whoever registered will get a copy of this recording. So for future reference, you can go back and listen. A lot of really good tidbits of information have been shared. So you'll definitely, I'm sure, want to go back and revisit this. And if you want to connect with any of us, Rebecca, Karen, or myself, in the email that we're going to send out, I will make sure that all of our contact information is in the email so that you guys can reach out to us for any other questions that we might be able to help you with. So yeah, I don't know if there's Alexa or Annabella, I don't know if you guys have any questions. Do you?
No questions here, just a lot of great info. Thank you.
Awesome. You're welcome.
No questions from me either.
Awesome. Thanks, Annabella. All right, so we will wrap this up. I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. We're a little bit over time, but I'm really happy actually that we were able to get all this information out to you within a good time frame. Again, we're all here to help you. We value your trust, and we look forward to helping you in the future. Take care.